Welcome back to another episode of Take the Leap Management. I'm so glad you're here with me today because we're diving into the heart of what makes DevOps tick. If you've been following along in our series, you'll know that DevOps is more than just a buzzword. It's a mindset, a culture, and a revolutionary way of working. But let's get real. Mindset and culture only take you so far. What truly brings DevOps to life are its practices, the nitty-gritty, hands-on stuff that transforms big ideas into real results. So today we're going to explore the key practices that make DevOps work. And trust me, this isn't just tech talk for the geeks in the room. These practices, like continuous integration and continuous deployment, infrastructure as code, and agile methodologies, are the backbone of modern innovation. Whether you're in IT management or just curious about how the digital magic happens, there's something here for everyone. Let's jump in. Let's start with a term you've probably heard before, CI/CD. That's continuous integration and continuous deployment. Sounds fancy, right? But at its core, CI/CD is all about speed and quality. Imagine you're running a relay race. Each runner needs to pass the baton seamlessly to the next for the team to win. In software development, CI/CD is like the ultimate relay race. But instead of passing a baton, teams are passing pieces of code. Continuous integration means that developers are constantly merging their code changes into a shared repository. Think of it like updating a shared Google Doc, but instead of words, it's lines of code. Every time a change is made, the system automatically tests it to make sure nothing breaks. If there's an issue, the team catches it early before it snowballs into a bigger problem. Now let's talk about continuous deployment, the second half of this dynamic duo. Once the code is tested and ready, it's automatically pushed into production. No waiting for a quarterly release, no scrambling to meet deadlines. It's just there, live and ready for users. This is the practice that lets companies like Netflix and Amazon roll out new features and updates faster than you can finish your popcorn. But it's not just about speed. It's also about reducing risk. Small incremental updates are much less likely to cause major outages than one giant overhaul. And if something does go wrong, you roll back, fix it, and move forward. No drama, no panic. All right, let's switch gears and talk about another game changer, infrastructure as code, or IAC for short. This is where things get really cool. Traditionally, setting up IT infrastructure was a manual process. Imagine assembling a piece of IKEA furniture without instructions every single time you needed a new table. That's what it was like for IT teams before ISC. But with ISC, everything changes. Instead of manually configuring servers, networks, and storage, teams write code to define their infrastructure. It's like having a blueprint that you can replicate over and over again with precision. Need to spin up 50 servers in the cloud? No problem. Just run the script. Need to tear it all down and start fresh? Done in minutes? The beauty of infrastructure as code is that it brings consistency and scalability to the table. When everything is defined in code, there's no room for human error. And because it's version controlled, just like application code, you can track changes, test updates, and even roll back to a previous version if needed. This is especially critical in today's world where businesses are scaling at an unprecedented rate. Whether you're a startup launching a new app or an enterprise managing global operations, IAC ensures your infrastructure can keep up without breaking a sweat. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but isn't it a bit overwhelming to implement? That's a fair question, and it brings us to our next key practice, agile methodologies. Agile is like the secret sauce that ties everything together. It's a way of working that's all about flexibility, collaboration, and delivering value quickly. In the world of DevOps, Agile principles are the foundation for everything else. Let me paint you a picture. In traditional project management, you'd spend months or even years planning, designing, and building a product before delivering it to the customer. And by the time it's ready, guess what? The customer's needs have probably changed. Agile flips this on its head. Instead of one massive delivery, teams work in short cycles, called sprints, usually lasting 2 to 4 weeks. At the end of each sprint, there's a tangible outcome, something you can show to stakeholders, gather feedback on, and refine. It's like building a house one room at a time, rather than waiting until the entire mansion is complete. But Agile isn't just about speed, it's about embracing change. In today's fast-paced world, the ability to adapt is priceless. Agile teams are constantly reassessing their priorities and adjusting their plans to meet evolving needs. And here's where the magic happens. When you combine Agile with practices like CI/CD and ISC, you create a development pipeline that's not just fast and flexible, but also rock solid. Now let me share a little secret. None of these practices exist in isolation. CI/CD, infrastructure as code, and agile methodologies are like pieces of a puzzle. When you put them together, you get something greater than the sum of its parts. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're part of a team developing a new app. Using Agile, you break the project into small, manageable chunks. Each sprint focuses on a specific feature or improvement. As the team writes code, they're using CI/CD to continuously integrate and deploy their changes. Meanwhile, the infrastructure team uses ISC to ensure the app is running on a stable, scalable environment. The result? Faster development, fewer bugs, and happier customers. It's a win-win-win. But let's not sugarcoat it. Implementing these practices isn't always a walk in the park. It requires a mindset shift, a commitment to learning, and a willingness to embrace change. One of the biggest hurdles teams face is resistance. People are naturally hesitant to let go of old habits and adopt new ways of working. It's not just about learning new tools. It's about unlearning outdated processes. And speaking of tools, let's not forget that technology is only part of the equation. You could have the best CI/CD pipeline, the most advanced ISC scripts, and the most agile-friendly team in the world, but if the culture isn't right, it all falls apart. DevOps is fundamentally about collaboration. Developers, operations, and everyone in between need to work together, communicate openly, and take shared responsibility for the outcome. That's where the real magic happens. All right, let's shift gears again and talk about the human side of DevOps. Because at the end of the day, it's people who make all of this work. One of my favorite things about DevOps is its emphasis on continuous learning and improvement. This isn't just about fixing bugs or optimizing pipelines. It's about creating a culture where feedback is valued, mistakes are seen as opportunities, and success is a team effort. Take blameless post-mortems, for example. When something goes wrong, the goal isn't to find someone to blame. It's to understand what happened, why it happened, and how to prevent it in the future. It's a practice that fosters trust, accountability, and a growth mindset. And let's not forget about automation. If there's one thing DevOps teams love, it's automating repetitive tasks. Not because they're lazy, but because it frees them up to focus on what really matters: innovation, problem solving, and delivering value. Whether it's automating deployments with CI/CD, provisioning infrastructure with IAC, or streamlining workflows with Agile, The goal is always the same: to work smarter, not harder. As we start to wrap up, let me leave you with this thought. DevOps isn't just a set of practices. It's a way of thinking, a way of working, and a way of building something greater than the sum of its parts. Practices like CI/CD, infrastructure as code, and agile methodologies are the tools in your toolkit, but the real power lies in how you use them. It's about creating a culture of collaboration, learning, and continuous improvement. It's about breaking down silos, embracing change, and delivering value at the speed of light. So, whether you're a manager looking to empower your team, or a developer eager to innovate, or just someone curious about how the digital world works, I hope today's episode has given you some insight and maybe even a little inspiration. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to Take the Leap Management for more stories, insights, and ideas that challenge the status quo. Until next time, keep taking the leap and keep pushing boundaries.